Hey there, everybody. Today I want to talk about sort of Christianity. I come from a Christian background, so uh, a lot of my points and a lot of my conversation comes from that background. I have to admit that fully. But I wanted to talk about Christianity very specifically in terms of historically where it came from, leading to modern day, and why Christianity is currently struggling in North America to find relevance any longer. And a lot of it has to do with just the church not fully accepting what Christianity actually was, and not really getting their message across very clearly to the scientific and atheistic community, I feel. Um, so I think I want to start by just sort of laying one thing right out on the table, and it's the big thing that I feel bogs down the conversation a lot, and that's, did Jesus exist or did he not exist? A lot of people get stuck on that idea. A lot of people will really talk and argue about that concept um, for hours without reaching any kind of conclusive sort of thing. That's the derisive point that people really want to plant their flag on, because a lot of it comes down to, I love Jesus, and if you don't love Jesus, then screw you. So I'm going to just say outright, uh, the existence or non-existence of Jesus Christ is entirely irrelevant. There is no relevance to be had in discovering whether or not Jesus existed or didn't exist. The reason for this is because in either case, if Jesus existed or if Jesus doesn't exist, his story certainly does. We have his story. Um, we know his story. It's very plain. It's out there. It's embedded in our culture. Uh, so whether or not he actually existed is wholly irrelevant, completely meaningless. It's a story, right? Uh, and what that does is, the atheist community, especially, I feel, well, most people actually feel that if it's just a story, then it's no longer useful. We can no longer do anything with it. We can no longer pay attention to it. And I sort of decry that line of thinking. Stories have power. Most of our communication ability and most of how we communicate with each other is done through stories. We are storytellers. Um, History is told through stories. Moral lessons are told through stories. Everything is told through stories, and as long as the story has weight and has importance and is done to elicit a point, then it has value. And so, regardless as to whether or not Jesus existed or not, his story does. Um, and we have to pay attention to it because it was a very influential story throughout most of history. Sorry, throughout most of modern history. I should be very clear about that. I mean, Jesus didn't have much of an impact pre the story of Jesus. But anyway, that's getting sidebarred. So, what 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 was the context that the Jesus story sort of showed up? I think that's what's more important. That's a more important question to ask than, did Jesus exist and did he walk around? Did he say these things for real? What's more important is, when the story kind of found root and sort of started growing, what was the context? Um, if you've ever seen the HBO series Rome, uh, it's phenomenal for giving context to the life of Jesus, to the story of Jesus. Um, the Roman world was essentially, it was an economy based on slavery, right? There was a very specific and very obvious class system. You had Roman citizens, and then you had slaves. Um, if you're a Roman citizen, you can buy and sell property, you can have rights, you have land, you're protected under the law, all of these kind of things. If you're a slave, you don't have those things. You are a piece of property owned by somebody, and that somebody can use you for whatever, right? And for real, like, for whatever. And There were rules in place in regards to like when and how you can treat slaves, but for the most part, it really boiled down to like, don't beat your slave on the street, take them home and beat them there, right? Um, if a woman was raped in this society, uh, the punishment was a small fine to be paid to the husband, incidentally. Um, so you can see kind of how people would come out of this society speaking out against it. And that's what Jesus was doing, and that's what the Jesus story is about. It's about speaking against this system of slavery. I hear a lot of people say some really odd things that Jesus never spoke out against slavery. Yeah, Jesus never said slavery is bad. He never said like that specific kind of thing. But he did say things like we all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. So we all have sinned. So the emperor is the same as the 10-year-old Persian boy who got captured and is now the slave to that person, right? Jesus said very specifically, like, an eye for an eye, these kind of equal punishments, equal punishment for equal thing, for equal offense. So you can't just rape a woman on the street and then pay some gold and get away with it. You know, if you're rich, you can't just do whatever you want, according to sort of what Jesus was saying. Now, that message spread like wildfire, right? People really ate it up, and you can see Christianity grew very quickly because it was a message of equality. It was a message of anti-slavery, and it was a message that said, we hate what's going on. So, I've only got 3 minutes left. Grr. Anyway, so you have Jesus speaking out for equality in this not equal world where the rich get to do whatever they want to the poor. That's just simply how it is. And as Christianity gets more and more accepted, you see the Roman Empire slowly degrade over time because its entire economy is based on slavery. Everything it's built is based on this idea that slaves exist and we need to keep doing that. And slowly over time, you see the slavery economy slowly degrade and slowly fall apart. People stop saying, I can own slaves. People begin to see the moral implication and the moral wrong that slavery represents. And the church comes out of the collapse of the Roman Empire very strong because the church has the message of anti-slavery. The church is saying slaves are bad. And the empire can't sustain itself without slavery, so it collapses. And so what comes out of that is a more feudalistic society, and that's a whole other thing. But at the end of the day, Christianity won. Christianity had a specific goal that it wanted to set out to do, and it won. It defeated slavery in the region. I mean, don't get me wrong, slavery still exists even today, and we need to fight against it. But in terms of Western culture, slavery is something that is no longer tolerated. We hate slavery. So now we've entered this sort of period of time, post sort of slavery and post the feudalistic era, where now Christianity is sort of struggling to find some kind of relevance. It's struggling, especially in this society, because now we've moved so beyond that initial message. We've moved so beyond that initial impetus, that initial sort of spark that ignited the Christian furor, or fervor, that we don't know where to go anymore with it. I think I have to create a part 2 to this, so this is going to be part 1 of this video, and in part 2 I'm going to talk about what Christianity can do and where it can go from here. And I feel that the message that I'm going to talk about in regards to Christianity can be used for most religion, can be used for all religion, because we all exist under that banner of religion. Anyway, peace.